Welcome back, everyone. Today we continue on in our Intro to Reduce series, and we're going to be discussing the partition function. So, as always, here are some prerequisites. So, you need an understanding of JavaScript, especially ES6, and either have been following along in the Intro to Reduce series, or you have an understanding of Reduce already. And that's it. Okay, so what is a partition function? Well, it's a function that separates an array based on a condition. It's going to do so into two buckets. The first of which being elements that pass that condition, and the second being elements that do not. So that might be hard to imagine, but let's look at a simple example. So first, we're going to pull in this partition function, and presumably we've either written this or we're going to pull it in from a library. We're also pulling in this isEven function, and this is a predicate function, and if you don't know, a predicate function is just some function that takes some data and will return a Boolean based on some condition. Okay, so we have an array, and we're going to call partition with that array. But notice the first argument is the predicate function. The second argument will be the array itself. And we get a new array back, and the first element in that array is an array itself of elements that pass that condition. The second element in the array is going to be an array itself of elements that do not pass the condition. Now you can use destructuring here to kind of make this more readable. We have this passed and failed variable capturing those inner arrays. All right, so let's look at a naive example of how to write this using filter. Stepping through the code, let's look at the parameter list. We're going to take a predicate function and an array to partition. We're going to return a new array. The first element being an array of elements that meet that condition, so they pass the predicate function. The second element being an array of elements that do not pass that predicate function, they don't meet the condition. Now we can also shorten this by using the not operator, and if this is confusing to you, I like to read this as follows. We're going to keep the element that does not pass the predicate function. So a problem here is that we're actually iterating twice. Remember, filter will iterate the array every time you call it, and we have two filter operations, so we're iterating twice. So let's see how we can use reduce to maybe optimize this. All right, so there's a bunch of stuff on the screen. Let's step through the code. The parameter list will be the same. We have this array we're going to call reduce on it. And as always, we need to think about what the accumulator is going to be. And so this time, we're just going to construct this array of two inner arrays. This way we can just push onto one of them. Now we need to think about the reducing function. So we have the accumulator, which again will be the array of arrays, and we have the current item. The first thing we do is check whether that item passes the predicate function or not. And if it does, we're just going to push that item onto the first inner array. That first inner array will be the ones that, the elements that pass the condition, and we'll return the accumulator. If the element doesn't pass the predicate function, we're going to push it onto the second inner array. That will be the array of failed elements, and we'll return the accumulator. So this will happen for each element, remember, and we'll be building up the accumulator, or the array of arrays. And that was really it as far as the function is concerned. But why might we use this? So here's a slightly real-world use case. We have this array of customers that have an isPaid property and a name property, and we want to segment this array into an array of customers that have paid and those that have not. And we can use partition for that. The second use case is, let's say you have some blog posts and you have an isDraft property on it, and you want to separate the blog posts into those that have been published and have not been published. Well, again, we can use partition for that. And that's it. Okay, so hopefully you learned a little bit about the partition function and how to implement it with reduce. And as always, if you like the video, leave me a comment below, and don't be afraid to hit those like and subscribe buttons. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.